Okay everyone, so now we are learning the components of .NET Framework architecture. The framework and architecture both are the same thing. Anybody can ask you what are the components of .NET Framework or what are the components of .NET architecture. The meaning is same. So if we talk about the .NET Framework components, there are multiple. But out of that, there are three components which are the major components. So first component out of that is the CLR, or we say it is the Common Language Runtime. We know that .NET is a double compilation process. It is not like the C or C++ or the VB where we are having the single compilation. We know that if we talk about the VB, then if we write some code, let's say we are writing a code here, and if we are just compiling that code, then that convert to the machine language, and that machine language operating system understand. So this is the C programming and the VB. And if we talk about the .NET, in the .NET, let's say if we write some code, now that code is compiled first. So this is the first compilation. After that, the code is converted to the IL. IL means intermediate language, and afterward again if we compile it, then it work on the machine language. So this is converted to the machine language. So that's why if we talk about the .NET here, or if we talk about the Java, then they both support this double compilation. And if we talk about the normal languages like VB or let's say C, C++, so they work like this. Now, in this double compilation, we create this intermediate language. An intermediate language is not understandable by any of the thing. Let's say the user cannot understand and even machine cannot understand. So user cannot read it and even machine cannot read it, because that is not a machine language and even it is not a code. So this intermediate language is very much secure and we can send to any of the person. Now to run this intermediate language, we need a CLR. CLR means Common Language Runtime. Just like if you talk about the Java, in the Java if we are having the code, now code is compiled to the bytecode. Here in the .NET we are having intermediate language. In the Java we are having the bytecode. Now to run that intermediate language, we need a CLR, and if we talk about the Java, there to run the bytecode we need the JVM. So that's why we can say that this CLR is similar to JVM of Java. We know that if we are writing the code in Java, then again if we are compiling that code, then in the Java it convert to the bytecode. The bytecode is very much secure and nobody can read this code. We can send this code from client to server, and this bytecode we can run on the JVM. That is the Java virtual machine. Let's say if I have developed any of the application, now that app I don't want anybody to read. I just want that you just play that app. Let's say I have designed a game in the app. Now that game code I don't want to share with you. So I will create the bytecode out of it and I will share it with you. Now that bytecode will be run in the JVM. That means only on those machines which is having the Java based. Java based means what? They are having the JVM. Similarly, if you talk about the .NET, you designed a game in the .NET and you don't want to give the code, so you will convert it to intermediate language. Now this intermediate language you can share with any of the person. Now to run that intermediate language, the machine should be having the CLR. So that's why we are mentioning that CLR is similar to the JVM of Java. Just like to run the bytecode, we need JVM. Similarly, to run the intermediate language, we need the CLR. So we can say that this CLR is the virtual machine component. Virtual machine component means it is the part of the .NET framework from where it work and monitor everything. CLR is not only giving the support to the intermediate language, it is having the various things. Just like if we talk about monitoring the .NET program, that means whatever the .NET program is doing right now, you know that whenever you are making the .NET program, it gives you suggestions like A and B variable not declared, you are using the A, you are typecasting the A. So everything is given to you. And who is monitoring them? Who is taking care of them? It is the CLR. So you can see that CLR is just like the heart of the .NET. So without CLR, .NET cannot work. So .NET CLR monitor the complete program, or we can say that CLR monitors the complete .NET program. Means whatever the .NET program is doing, that is taken care with the CLR. So we can say that CLR is a component which is like the Java virtual machine and which is required on a system so that intermediate language can run on the system. Means if you want to run any of the application of .NET, you need the CLR. It is a virtual component and it monitors the complete .NET program. So this one is the first major component of .NET. Now we are learning the next component of .NET framework, and that is the CTS, which is Common Type System. As the name signify common type, that means in the .NET you are having the common types. Now what is the type? We know that there is a term data type. Just like we are having the integer, float, character, string. So these are the data types. And in the .NET we are having the common type. Common type means if I am taking any of the programming language in the .NET, let's say it's VB.NET, C#, .NET, so there it support a same type, and because of that same type, the language are interoperable. Interoperable means, let's say if I am writing a code in VB, now that code I can easily convert to the C#.NET, or I can use the C# code to J#.NET. So one code if I am writing, that I can use anywhere, and this is only because their types are same. That's why it is called the CTS, which is taking care of all the types. So we can say that the CTS, or the common type system, provide the language interoperability. Because the types are same, only because of that the language are interoperable. Let's say if you are declaring the integer, then this integer which is declared in the VB.NET should be compatible with the integer of, let's say, J#.NET. Only then the code of VB.NET can run into the C#.NET or the J#.NET. So this way the language are becoming the interoperable because their common types are available. It is going to manage the data types which are supported by various .NET programming languages. Means whatever the data type different programming languages which are supported by the .NET are using, that can be managed by the CTS. So CTS is responsible for all the data types which are used into the programming languages of .NET, and they make them interoperable because they are using the same type system. That's why it is called as common type system. So this is the second major component of the .NET. Now if you talk about the third component of .NET, then it is the FCL, which is Framework Class Library. So talking about framework class library, we know that whenever we are going to write any of the program in any of the language, let's say if I am writing a program, now here we use some of the functions. Let's say if you talk about the C, we use the printf function. Now for that support, we are going to include the header file in the C. We know that if this is the code, then this will be the header file that we are going to include into the C. Let's say it is stdio.h and we are including here, and in this code we are writing the printf function. So any of the function which we are performing here, so because of that we need some of the header file to be included. Now that header file is having different names. Let's say if you talk about the Java, in the Java we are having the packages, and if you talk about .NET, in the .NET we are having the libraries. So if you are having any of the function or any of the method which we are using inside the code, and for that code you need to include header file for the C, or the library if you talk about this .NET, or package if you talk about the Java. So the name is different, purpose is same. What this header file or the library or the package are doing, these are nothing. Let's say if I take this framework class library, now these are nothing but these contain some set of classes. Let's say if I have to include a color, now a specified color class will be available into the libraries, so that it will be having blue color, red color, green color. Or let's say if I have to connect with the database, so some of the header file will be available. Similarly, if you talk about this .NET, some of the library will be available for connectivity. So these types of classes are already defined into the system, and they are called the libraries, which we are going to include in our program. So we can say that this FCL or the framework class library is similar to class libraries of Java. Just like in the Java we are having the packages, here in the .NET we are having the libraries. And what they are doing, they are providing the functionality to the program. That's why we can say that it consists of various base classes used to provide different services to the framework. So that means this framework class library contain various classes, and from these classes we can provide the functionality to the .NET program. So these are the three major components. So if we are taking a quick review, then we should know that the first component we are having is the CLR. CLR is the heart of .NET framework, and this is just like same with the JVM of Java. Just like if we talk about Java, if I am having a code, I am compiling it. Now that code will be converted to the bytecode. Now this bytecode can only run into the JVM, means machine should be having the JVM. Similarly, if we talk about the .NET here, if I am having the code, I am compiling it, it will be converted to the intermediate language. This intermediate language is very secure, and to run this intermediate language, the machine should be having the CLR. So here we should be having the CLR, and on that CLR, this intermediate language run. So Java and the .NET both are the two-step compilation, and because of this bytecode of Java and intermediate language of .NET, they are very much secure and they work on the client server, because you know that if I am having, let's say this is the client and we are having the server here. Now if server is sending some of the data to the client, now server is not going to send the complete code. This code will be first converted to the bytecode or the intermediate language. Now this intermediate language is going, and at the client side it is just working with the CLR. So client should be having the CLR to work with the intermediate language, and from the network intermediate language is moving so that no hacker can attack on this, and this is completely secure. And you assume that if I am sending the code, what will happen? Anybody can crack this code and even steal that code. So on the client server platform, just like if we talk about, let's say Facebook, we are opening on our system. Now here, what we are doing, the Facebook is having the code. Now that code, Facebook is not sharing with us. Facebook is only sharing the compiled code. Let's say the bytecode or the intermediate language, it is coming to us. We can execute the Facebook, we can see it. We cannot modify the code of Facebook. To run that Facebook, we need, let's say, browser. Similarly, to run this intermediate language, we need the CLR. So this CLR is the heart, and it monitors the complete .NET program. Next component we are having is the CTS. We know that .NET is famous for the interoperability. Let's say if I am writing a code, this code if I am writing, let's say, into the VB.NET. Now this code can be converted easily to the any of the language code which is supported by .NET, let's say C#.NET. Now how it is possible? Inside the code I will write many things. Let's say I will write integer, float, double, many things I am going to declare. So how they are converted to the C#, their syntax is different. But yes, it is converted because they are using the common type system. And who is taking care of that? CTS. So CTS is taking care of changing the code from one language to another language. It is providing the common type system. Now the third component of .NET we are having is the framework class library. We know that that is very much essential whenever we are making any of the program. Let's say if we talk about C, we are having printf and the scanf functions. These are already defined. Let's say we are having stdio.h header file for that. Similarly, if we talk about the Java or .NET, there we are having the libraries where all the functions are defined. So these are the three major components of .NET: CLR, CTS and FCL. Now we are discussing the other components. Now we are learning the other components of .NET framework. Other means they are not coming into the top priority, just like the three components are there: CLR, CTS and FCL. These are the three major, and these are the other components which are for sure required but not as much important. So the first one we are having is the metadata and assemblies. Data about data is called the metadata. Let's say if I am having a text box, that is a data. Now inside the text box, let's say if I am having the text, I am having their forecolor, back color. So data about data. If we are going towards information of information, that is called metadata. Let's say if I ask a student name, simply you are giving me a name. Now if I ask what is the name of father of that student, so it is a metadata. Maybe the mother name, sister name, brother name. So that is a metadata, means data about data. And that is very much important. Why? Because every control is having their own data. So the metadata is the data about data. And second thing we are having is the assembly. We know that if I take the example of Facebook, in the Facebook there are multiple pages. There is a login page, there is a page of friends, there is a page, let's say, where our likes are stored, or there is a page for the posts, one for the video. Now what is the first page from where your project start? That is called assembly. So first page is the login page. Whenever you start the Facebook, first page will be the login page only. So assembly is the that part from where your project start. So this is the component of .NET framework. Now the second thing we are having the Windows form. Whenever we are going to declare the .NET application, we create multiple types of forms. Let's say if I am creating this form, here I will drag and drop some button, I will write something. So now these are the part of .NET framework. So these are the forms, and these form can be many. Let's say form 1, form 2. So to design a website of multiple pages, we need the multiple forms. So this way Windows form is one more component. Now the next component is ASP.NET. ASP stands for active server pages. Whenever we are going to design a web development into the .NET, web development means we are designing a web application. We know that the application which run on the browser, let's say Chrome, Safari, whenever we are opening some website, now those websites are called the part of ASP.NET, because ASP.NET is used to design the web pages. So if you want to develop the Facebook, you want to develop any of the website, then ASP.NET is the answer. Now the next component we are having is the ADO.NET. ADO stands for ActiveX Data Object. Now ADO.NET is used for the connectivity. Whenever you are going to connect your front end with the back end, let's say you are having a form here. Now this form you want to connect with some database. Now for that you need the connectivity. So this is our database. I am mentioning as the DB. Now here we need the connectivity. So this connectivity is provided with the help of ADO.NET. So ADO.NET is the ActiveX data object that is used for connecting the front end with the back end. That means your form with the database. Now we are going with the other component, that is the Windows Workflow Foundation. As the name signify, Workflow Foundation, or in the short we are having WF. Now we know that sometimes in the business applications we have to create an application which run for the long time. Now for these long running processes, we has to design the workflow, means how the workflow will work, means from this application to that application, where the work is going to flow. So for that, in the business processes, we use this Windows Workflow Foundation. Now if we talk about the next component, that is the Window Presentation Foundation. The short name of Window Presentation Foundation is the WPF. We know that whenever we develop the web application or the Windows application, there we are having the user interface. So in the Windows based application, to provide the user interface, we need the presentation. So that presentation is provided by the Windows Presentation Foundation or the WPF. Now we are having the next component, that is the Windows Communication Foundation. The short form of Windows Communication Foundation is WCF. As the name signify communication foundation, so this is for the communication. We know that we are having the client server machines, and the client server machine, we need the service oriented application where we should be having the connected database. So for that connectivity, we need this communication foundation, which is known as Windows Communication Foundation, or in the short WCF. Then the next component we are having is the Windows Card Space. The short form of window card space is the WCS. Now this Windows card space is used to take the digital identity of the user. Means if a user is performing some application or using some application, now that digital identity is stored with the help of these card spaces, and this is called as Windows card space or WCS. Now afterward we are having the next component, which is the link. There is a full form of link which is called the language integrated query. We know that we connect our form with the databases. Now inside the form we do some coding. Let's say in the VB.NET or the C#.NET we are going to perform certain coding. Now with that coding we are going to access the database. So that means in the code we are going to write some commands also, some SQL queries also, so that database can be captured. So whenever we are writing the queries, SQL queries especially inside a language like VB.NET or C#.NET, they are called the language integrated query. Means you are writing SQL queries inside your programming language. So they combinedly become the link, language integrated query. So as the name signify, you can write the SQL queries inside your programming language so that you can access the database, you can fetch the records. So these are all components of .NET Framework architecture.